France is interesting. Lately it has attracted a lot of attention, mostly due to crazy protests. But there was something else. When almost all other European nations were suffering from the gas wars with Russia, fighting staggering inflation by European standards, France managed more or less just fine, probably better than anyone else. Let's figure out why. What is the secret French recipe here? The French economy is impressive, the 7th in the world and the 3rd in Europe. Its GDP is equal to $2.9 trillion and it's slightly lagging behind the UK with 3.1 trillion. It's a home to 31 out of 500 biggest international companies, the largest foreign direct investment recipient in Europe, and Europe's second largest spender in research and development. But its size isn't everything. France is self-sufficient and seriously diversified. When you hear France, you think Chateau and Renault, but it produces everything. World-famous drugs and pharmaceutical equipment, cosmetics, cars, gas turbines, planes, high-speed trains, space technology, and yes, wine and cheese. And also arms. It's actually the 3rd largest arms exporter in the world after the United States and Russia. And soon it will probably become the 2nd since its arm industry is growing, Russia is under sanctions, and its clients are under pressure. That one really surprised me. France is soon to be 2nd largest arms exporter after the United States. Tourism accounts for a surprisingly large chunk of the economy. About 2 million people work in this sector, and it contributes somewhere from 7.5 to 10% of GDP. All because people actually want to see the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, relax at the beach resorts, ski, and see at least one of its 45 UNESCO World Heritage sites. The public transport system is superb, getting from one place to another is fast and convenient. By the way, most tourists that come to France are actually other Europeans. Out of the 90 million people that visited the country in 2019, more than 60 were from the EU. After them it's Americans, Australians, New Zealanders, and only then Chinese and everybody else. When you speak about the French economy, you cannot go without mentioning Euronext. It's a merger between the Amsterdam, Paris and Brussels stock exchanges. This is where you can trade French stocks like Airbus. Of course, it's the largest in Europe, the title it took from the London Stock Exchange in 2022. Everyone seems to be praising France's energy sector. France has historically been generating low levels of carbon dioxide. Why? Energy in France used to be generated primarily from 5 sources: natural gas, liquid fuels, coal, renewables, and nuclear. This is where it gets cool. In 2020, nuclear power made up 78% of all electricity generation, the largest share of nuclear electricity in the world, by the way. Coal energy was in decline and on the verge of going away. Renewables accounted for 19%. France is also one of the world's biggest electricity exporters. Now, how cool is that? France learned to love nuclear energy, which is awesome and much safer than people give it credit for, in 1973, during the oil crisis when the Saudi king embargoed countries that had supported Israel during the Arab-Israeli war, which led to the oil prices increasing 4 times from $3 per barrel to $12 within a year. And at that time, most of France's electricity came from foreign oil, so as you can imagine it was a serious blow. In 1974, the French Prime Minister Pierre Mesmer devised a plan that was later named the Mesmer Plan, a huge nuclear power program that aimed to generate all of France's electricity from nuclear power. France lacked its own reserves of oil, but it had something better. Back then, the situation was summarized in a slogan: "In France, we do not have oil, but we have ideas." And ideas they had. It sparked debates and concerns, but they still went through with it, and it paid off. Nuclear energy in France isn't perfect, of course, and sometimes it has to import energy from outside, like in 2012, when Germany helped France get through the notoriously cold winter because the country's electricity demand went through the roof. It isn't perfect, but it's pretty damn good. So when Russia rolled out its counter-sanctions in 2022 by closing the pipe, so to speak, France didn't care that much, unlike Germany, which has been hooked on Russian gas since the Soviets. It does, however, experience certain problems with nuclear right now. In September 2022, 32 of France's 56 nuclear reactors were shut down and under maintenance. Europe's driest summer in the last 500 years had serious consequences for power plant cooling systems. Plus, the plants themselves aren't getting any younger. But France will for sure figure it out. France is a country for regular people. free education, free universal healthcare, 5 weeks of annual vacation, paid parental leave, and retirement at age 62. I say that's a pretty good package right there. But not so much for corporations or businesses, even, or rather, especially small or mid-sized ones. Because you see, the big guys can typically get their way, even in France. Still, the official work week is 35 hours. However, not everybody works 35 hours. If you ask any random French person, they would probably tell you that most of the people they know work more than legal hours and are not really paid for the overwork. But nonetheless, the minimum wage is around 1200 euros for a full-time worker after tax. Firing somebody is, while entirely possible, still more complicated than in other places, which makes employers extra cautious and pushes them to hire new people only when they absolutely need them. Taxes are high as in the Nordics, the personal income tax rate is progressive, and real high-income earners get to pay almost 50%. The French system is pretty similar to the United States, so if you're a resident of France, not necessarily a citizen, you're bound to pay taxes for all of your worldwide assets. Employers also pay large social taxes on behalf of their employees, and the corporate income tax is fixed. It was lowered for some reason by the current President Macron from 33.3% in 2017 to 25% flat in 2022. Evidently, like everywhere else, the super-rich avoid taxes like there is no tomorrow, but the government semi-tries to shake them to a varying degree of success. People outside of France think that since the French have officially 35-hour work weeks and aren't really known to have a culture of workaholics or super-achievers, they're actually lazy and unproductive. That's not true. The French are quite productive when they work, but when they're off work, for real. Because in France, people work to live, not the other way around. France also has unions, which are a force to be reckoned with, in spite of the fact that only 9% of the workers are union members. Think of it this way. In France, there is the government, the opposition, and then there are trade unions that can muster over 1 million people nationwide to go on a strike and disrupt the country for months. Rivalry is good. It makes good things happen in the end. Too much power doesn't concentrate in a few hands, and in France there is plenty of rivalry. It's more than just left versus right, certainly more than having just a single right. To understand any country's successes or failures, it's always a good idea to look at its people. There are many things that can be said about the French, but I'll limit myself to only two. First, as has already been mentioned, the French work to live, not the other way around. This sense of moderation and contentment is a common trait among many European nations, because it is a pretty European trait after all. Who else but Europeans think this way? Does everyone really need to push themselves to the limit, create a new business empire or climb the corporate ladder to the very top? Europeans say no. A fairly comfortable life is all you really need. But then there is the second thing, and it's uniquely French. The people of France are the kind of people who, while living in a great country with high standards of living, think that they sort of live in hell. Yes, they don't say that France is paradise, inhabited by people who think they're in hell for nothing. And that national mindset is what drives France forward. That mindset is why the beautiful streets of Paris are filled with trash, police lines, and boarded up shops. But that is also why they had the French Revolution. That's why they were the first to defeat the obsolete institutions that you can still find around the globe 300 years later. That's why they were among the very first to industrialize, and so on and so forth. So no wonder when the government says, hey, we're going to increase the retirement age by 2 years, it's kinda necessary, and look, all other countries in the EU set their retirement age to 65, 67 years old. Ours is still 62, and we're only going to pump it up to 64, but it's gonna really help the economy. Please don't lose it. And then the French totally lose it. Hey, we worked our entire lives under these terms, and now you change them? We don't like it, and we're gonna let you know. And that's why France is France. Although again, it's not perfect. I mean, during COVID, the entire country went on lockdowns multiple times, got mandatory vaccinations without any real choice, and there wasn't much dissent against what could be called by some a violation of rights, and famous yellow vests disappeared off the streets in an instant. There is also a question of Paris and cities like Marseille. They have a reputation, like they used to be better, cleaner, safer, had less graffiti, and never go-to areas. I wonder what's up with that, and would love to hear the opinions of French people down in the comments below, because I'm really curious, is it as bad as they say? Nevertheless, while this quality of standing up for your rights, for what's better for you, isn't bulletproof, it's still there, and it's awesome. No country is without its own set of challenges, so what challenges does France face? I've highlighted 5. The first is unemployment. For the last 35 years, France just couldn't drop its unemployment below 7%, often floating around 9 or even 10. It has been declining in recent years, but it still persists. French unemployment is not that bad though. and the stats that you hear paint the real picture. The second is, of course, the migrant issues. France has a lot of migrants that come from drastically different cultures, don't want to or don't have opportunities to properly assimilate, learn French, and just burden the taxpayers. And sometimes much worse. This one fuels the third challenge, societal division. France appears to be divided. Much like the United States, there has been a strong lean towards right-wing policies, and pretty hardcore ones at that. Considering the amount of support those groups have, for example Marine Le Pen, which in France is considered to be far-right, gained 41% in the presidential race of 2022. There's gotta be some convincing reasons for so many people to feel this way. Then there is the future population decline, a common problem in the developed world. France's birth rate has been plummeting. In the first half of 2023, it dropped by 7% compared to the same period in 2022. Again, it's not that bad, and the population will continue to slowly grow until the year 2040, when it's expected to actually start a slow but certain decline. This all ties, of course, into sluggish economic growth. As we discussed in the beginning, the French economy is impressive, but it's not really growing that much, 1 to 1.3% each year, and that's nothing to brag about. All in all, its problems are concerning, but given enough competent political will, they are fixable. Considering what France has been through in its long and rich history, those issues shouldn't pose that big of a challenge for its people. And now France is actually doing fine. It has a lot going for it. A strong and diversified economy, well-educated and politically active people, beautiful, gorgeous, incredibly livable cities, and more. So I really want to see what the future holds for France. But what about you? Thank you for watching.